Okay, so we start off with lesson 1, and lesson 1 is a lesson that is not really meant to teach the students anything except to give them success right off the bat. It's to make resolve appear easy and simple, and just to make students feel at ease. So it's meant as a very simple project where they create a 1-minute movie just to have success. So almost everything that is done in this lesson is repeated throughout the book. So you start off in the project manager here, and you explain that the project manager is where you have all of your projects. Right now we don't have any projects in here. So what you can do is you have an untitled project thumbnail, which can act as a new project for you. And all you have to do to open it is just to double click on it. And by default, Resolve will show you the edit page, and whenever you go to a new page throughout the book, you always want to explain the interface. So here we would explain that this is kind of a standard editing interface with your source viewer and your timeline viewer and your timeline running along the bottom. And over on the left is your media pool where all your clips will be stored. So if you just want to import clips, the way we do it in this lesson is to use the file import menu, because that just leaves them in the edit page, makes it easier. So we say file, import media, and then we go and we find in our documents our lessons, lesson 1, and with that we can just select all of the clips in here and say open, and they're imported. You explain that the media hasn't moved, it's still on the same location in your hard drive, it is still the same file format, it's just linked to wherever it is on your hard drive. And it gets imported into what's called a master bin. And every project has a master bin by default, and everything that you import or any bin that you create later is always stored in the master bin. So everything gets stored in the master bin, and the master bin is automatically created for every project. So you talk about now we have clips in our bin, and you can sort them up here. We go over here to this sort menu, and you click on it and you can sort by different names in thumbnail view, and we'll choose file name, and that puts them in the right order for you when you go to edit them. So once we do that, we can say just to make your first edit, all you have to do is grab a clip. This happens to be a still photo. It's the only still photo we have in this project, but we use that first. So we can just grab it and drag it over into the timeline. Just so you know, if you drag and leave it up the top here and let go, it will snap it to the beginning, so you don't have to be as precise trying to get it right at the beginning here. And what you end up with is a clip in your timeline right here, and it shows, and you have a red playhead, which allows you to see what where you are in the viewer, matches in the timeline viewer. But if you're dealing with video, you probably want to load that into your source viewer first. So you can just come over to O2 interview, double click it to load it in. You'll want to go to the beginning of this clip and play it. So you talk about how there are controls, and you can click on the go to the head of the clip button and then click the play forward button. And normally in a class you would play this. I won't play this for you, but play it a little bit.
They call us glass blowers, but really we're heat managers.
Right, so she says something good, you play it all the way through, and that's a good clip. You might want to take the entire clip, and the way you can add that to your timeline is just come up in the center of the source clip and just drag it right down. And you tell them how if you get close to the end of your first clip in the timeline, you'll have a snapping feature. You can turn that on and off, but it's helpful right now to know that we are right up against that last clip, so we're not leaving any gap in between, because the snapping feature just snaps the two together and you can let go. And here's where we would explain more about the playhead and how you can drag it, and how you also have corresponding transport controls underneath the timeline viewer. And if you click the go to previous cut point, it's going to bring you to the previous cut point in the timeline, and then you can click it again to go to the beginning of the timeline, and you can also hit the play button to play forward. So what we might want to do next is add a bunch of clips all at once. Maybe you don't want to add one by one, but you want to add a bunch of clips at once. So we can go over to, this is where we jump to clip 4 at the bench, and we come down to the last kind of glass blowing shot, which is 14, finished, and we shift click to select all of the clips in between, and we're going to add all of these to our timeline at once. And where do we want to add it? Probably somewhere maybe in the middle of her clip. We don't have to see her on screen. She says some good stuff, but we don't have to see her on screen the whole time. Maybe showing some glass blowing would be nicer, so we'll play the first sentence.
They call us glass blowers, but really we're heat managers.
And maybe right there after heat managers is where you want to add the rest of the clips. Now we're not going to overwrite her audio, we just want to cover up her picture while she says the rest of it. And you can use the waveforms that are shown here in the timeline to see the gap that's right there in between the two sentences. So I'm just going to place my playhead at that position, so when I drag these clips it makes it easy to snap right to them. So I'm just going to come and drag these selected clips into my timeline. You can see they're all strung out there, and I can just drag them forward. It will snap to the end, and then if I keep moving it will snap to the playhead, so I know exactly they'll start in that gap between the two sentences. And now I'll let go. Now this is where you talk about you've added these 14 clips and not everything is fitting in your timeline, but you can make them fit. There's a really handy tool underneath the view menu. Again, show them where the menu is first, and then we'll go back to the shortcuts. Eventually we use this shortcut enough that they'll learn how to use it. But we first go up to View, Zoom, Zoom to Fit, which is Shift Z or Shift Z. And when we do it, we'll see our entire timeline in the window there. And we can back up to maybe the beginning of her interview, just tell them how to click right to it. And then instead of going all the way over to the transport controls underneath the timeline, we can just hit spacebar to play.
They call us glass blowers, but really we're heat managers. And we're constantly working to put heat in some places and remove it in others.
Okay, so next what we're going to do is we add a little bit more dialogue. And what we're going to do is go up to clip 03, which is another piece of the interview. We're going to double click it, and we're going to go to the beginning of the clip here. Now, to find the portion we want, we're only going to add some audio, but to find the portion that we want, you can either play it, but it's relatively long. It's somewhere about a third of the way in, or you can just drag about a third of the way in and then start playing it. And what you're looking for is where she says, also, you can't touch or sculpt the glass. So you're looking for the word also, you can't touch or sculpt.
Come back and work on it later. You have to start and finish that project at the bench in that time frame. And it's unlike jewelry, it's unlike ceramics or metal fabrication or painting or drawing. You can't just put it down. It has this timeline, it has this limit. Also, you can't touch or sculpt.
Now that's good. We heard the sentence, but to make it easier to find the exact location, what we can do is go up to our options menu, and we can actually show a zoomed audio waveform overlaid on top of the source clip. And what that will allow us to do is actually see the words that she's speaking, so we know we can find exactly the spot we're looking for, either in just before the word also. So we're going to back this up. You can see there's a little space here.
Limit. Also, you can't.
Right, so that here we can see the word, and we can see the word also. So you know exactly by showing the overlay exactly where you have to be, somewhere in the middle here. And what we're going to do is say that's the beginning of what we want to add. So we need a way to mark this area and say this is where you're going to start in this clip. And to do that, you have a little mark in button right here in the lower right hand corner of the viewer. We're just going to hit mark in. And then we're going to play it a little bit longer to find the end of this clip, which she says it's a huge adrenaline rush. Now, to make it easier to find things, you can use the timecode numbers that Resolve gives you in the upper right hand corner of the source and in the timeline viewer. So in the source viewer, if we know we want to go to 15383800, we can just start dragging this little white playhead here until we get close, right around there, and then we'll start playing it.
Curve, and it's a huge adrenaline rush.
And that's where we want it to stop. So right around 38:00 is where you can start playing, and then you'll find it's a huge adrenaline rush. And again, using these waveform overlays really handy. You can park yourself in between the two words where she's not saying anything. That's going to be where we stop. So we have another button called a mark out button to mark our out point. And this marks the region that we're going to add to our timeline. So what we can do now is we just want to find a place to add it into our timeline. I'm just going to go at the end of our fourth clip. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And it's right at the beginning of 06. And I just want to take the audio now. I don't want to take the picture because I have these nice glass blowing pictures. So to do that, what I can do is hover my mouse over the source viewer, and you'll see these two overlays that come up on screen. And one is for taking video only, and one is for taking audio only. So I'm just going to take the audio only and just drag it down till I get to my playhead and have it snap up against my playhead so I know it starts right there at the beginning of that clip. And what I can do is just back up again, and I would play this.
Also, you can't touch or sculpt the glass with your hands. You have to use a variety of different tools, and glassblowers get pretty creative with what tools.
So you can see that's a really nice piece there. Now the thing that's missing here is some music. So we want to add some music in here, and over here in our bin you can see there's a little note icon over this thumbnail, and that indicates that it is an audio only clip. We can double click it to load it into our source viewer. Now audio clips have a little bit of a different look, and you want to explain that this is the entire track up above, and then this is a detailed view down below here, and you can play a little bit. Now this is a 1-minute music, and we're making a 1-minute movie, so we're going to take the whole thing. So we're just going to drag it down. Now we don't have another audio track down in our timeline to place this, but if you just drag it, you'll see that Resolve adds audio 2 automatically for us if we drag below the current audio 1 track. So we're just going to drag it and show us down below, and you can see now it makes an audio 2 track, and we're just going to drag this to the beginning until it snaps to the very beginning of our program. And now what you would do is you would just move your playhead to the beginning. You can either do that by clicking, back, or you can just click at the beginning of the timeline with the playhead, and you would start to play it.
They call us glass blowers,
but it's much too loud for her voice, so I want to lower it. And the way you would lower it is you select it, and we teach them how to do this in the inspector first. Just select the audio clip and go up and open up the inspector, which is in the upper right hand corner. The inspector shows you all the controls that you will want to adjust on the selected clip. So it comes up first at the top here with clip volume, and we can actually play the timeline as we adjust the clip volume. So we can hit play,
but really we're heat
and as we go play we can adjust this clip volume lower.
managers, and we're constantly working to put heat in some places and remove it.
So I'm going to lower it to anywhere between -15 and -20. Sounds about right to me, so you can pick what you like. But we're just lowering it down there. And once we've lowered the clip volume, then we can come up to the inspector and close it. So this is just getting people used to the interfaces, roughly, the inspector, the timeline, the media pool. It's just getting them used to the interfaces and where they might click in the future. So now we have our music in there. But you can see the music is 1 minute, but our timeline goes longer than that. So we might want to be able to shorten this. And one way to shorten is just by deleting a clip. And we end up deleting the second from last clip. But I have them play the last 3 clips just so they can see that this one, and I'll just skim over it for you so I don't play it. This third from the end is a nice shot. It's liquidy glass. You want to keep that. The second one is some tools and they seem out of place, and then the last shot is really the final product, so you want to keep that. So the one that we can delete is this second from end of the tools, and we just select it and we hit either the backspace or delete key, whichever you use on your keyboard. And when we do that, it lifts it out of the timeline and leaves a gap. Now we don't want to leave a gap, so we explain that you can click clips just by selecting them and dragging them. You can move them anywhere along the timeline, and we're just going to drag it to close up the gap, and it's going to snap to the end of that clip. So now we've shortened our timeline, and it almost matches, but it's not quite the same duration as our music, so we still need to take a little bit more off. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this nice shot of this liquidy glass, right here, and we are going to shorten that, but not by trimming it. We're going to change the speed. We're going to speed it up because it's a nice shot, but it's a bit slow. So what we're going to do is select it, right click, and choose Retime Controls. And then when we do that, you get a speed change bar at the top here. And you can change the speed of the clip by just hovering over the right edge of the clip, right at the speed change bar. You'll get this resize cursor when you're on the right edge. And you can click and start dragging it. And you can see down below the clip, it actually shows you the duration or the speed change. 132%, so it's 132% of speed, so it's playing faster. So it shows you how fast it's actually going to go, and we've opened up another gap, so I'm just going to drag this clip in. Now, is this the most efficient way to do this? No, but you don't want to introduce too many things. You want to get the simple things out of the way so people who are new to it don't feel overwhelmed. So you are repeating some things, but that's okay because it makes people feel comfortable. So now you can play that back and you'd see that this plays a lot faster and it ends pretty well with the music now. And now we have our 1 minute music, a 1 minute movie. So now we can start to focus on the content of the program, making embellishments along that instead of timing adjustments. And one of them might be to spice up the beginning of this clip because it's just a still frame that we start on. And Resolve has a really nice way to deal with still frames just to create automatic movement with them, kind of a panning and zooming effect on the clips. We'll select it, and much like we did for the audio controls, we can go back up to our inspector to get the video controls. So when a video clip is selected, you get video controls, things like zooming and positioning and things like that. But in particularly, that one that's helpful for still photos is something called dynamic zoom. So you want to scroll down to it, find dynamic zoom. It's off by default, so you want to click on the gray dot and then you can just play it. And it adds a nice pull out on these pipe warmers. Now, if we wanted to draw the audience in, we might want to zoom in on it instead. So in our dynamic zoom controls, we can hit the swap button. And now when we play it again, it's going to zoom in on the clip. Now this works on video clips as well, by the way, but we're dealing with it on a photograph here and it works really well. So here we can close up the inspector and you can talk about how you might think this is a very simple tool and you don't have much control, but you have a lot of control over the dynamic zoom, and a lot of it is found in the overlays on the viewer, the on-screen controls. So we need to turn those on for the dynamic zoom. So you come down to the lower left-hand corner of the viewer and you click on the down arrow and you see that it has dynamic zoom on-screen controls, and we're going to click on that. And what you get is a green outline and a red outline. The green outline is the starting point for the dynamic zoom, and the red one is where the framing ends up. But the green is activated, it's bold as you can see. To activate the red and to change the ending result, we just click on one of the white handles. You can see the red now becomes bold. To change the framing, maybe we want to center the pipe warmer more, we can just click inside the red square and the red rectangle and just position it just a little bit so the pipe warmer is more centered in our rectangle. And if that's all we want to do, we could just click on the button to turn off the on-screen controls and play it back. Okay, and the last thing we want to do here is we want to start to add a title. So I'm going to add a title on this. I'm not going to do it over her, but on this third clip, this is a nice long clip that it would be nice to add a title over. Now titles are located in your effects library. So come up to the upper left, click on it, and you'll have your toolbox here of tools, and you'll see that the toolbox includes titles. Now, the effects library includes all of your transitions, your audio transitions and video transitions, as well as third-party filter effects that you can grab from here. But it also has titles, which are a series of 5 templates that you can use. We're going to choose the basic text template, and all we're going to do, the way you deal with titles, is you add them first to the timeline and then you modify them. So we're just going to take this text template and drag it right on top of this third clip, and you can see now it is on top, and if we hover over it you can see the title in the viewer. But we want to get controls for it, so we're going to select it in the timeline first and go back up to our inspector, and now that a title segment is selected in our timeline, you get title controls in the inspector. Now you can just come over to the title in the viewer and double click on it, and you can actually highlight it just by double clicking on it and change the letters right there. So I'm going to type in her name, so Taryn Jane Glass, and here you can change the font and the color. So if I want to make it a nice little light teal color in there. Now I can change the sizing, but what I might want to do is know where my Save Title guides are. So we go up to the View menu, and you'll come down to where it says Safe Area, and we'll turn them on. You can see all the different ones there. We're going to turn them on. And the innermost one is the Save Title. So we can come over to the size and just start dragging that to the right. It's actually a little bit easier if you go over to the numeric value and drag it to the right, because it's a smoother, it doesn't jump as much. So you get a nice smoother incremental resize there. So now we have our title and it's sized correctly. We're going to go back up to the viewer and choose Safe Area and choose On to turn them off there. And we can actually close up our inspector because now we have a nice title on our screen. If we don't have a dedicated viewer, we can come up to Workspace and we can choose a Viewer Mode, Cinema Viewer, or Command F, and that will bring us into full screen where we can then play our project back for us. So here we can see it, and I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I'll play a little bit.
They call us glass blowers, but really we're heat managers.
And then we'll hit escape to come back out. You can also move your mouse down towards the bottom and you'll get a little scrubber. You'll also get this expand button. If you click that, you'll leave the cinema viewer as well. Now the last thing we do here is we've finished our project. We're just going to go up to File and we're going to say Save this project, and we're going to call it Glass Blowing. And we've finished lesson 1, and we've finished our glass blowing 1-minute movie.